What's up, everybody, and welcome in to the Philly Sports Power Hour with Bill Colarulo. It's good to see a lot of the Power Hour crew checking in nice and early with the kind words today. As always, we're streaming live across the JAKIB Sports Network. We're streaming live across Bill Colarulo's social media. And we're going to be joined later on in the show, like we are every Wednesday, by the one and only Kayla Santiago, who does a great job covering the Sixers and the Eagles. So we're going to talk to Kayla about both of those sports teams today. And I want to dive into what Craig Carton from FS1 had to say about this Eagles team. And I also want to talk about the defense, because we spent a lot of time this week talking about the offense. Yesterday, I went over all my rankings for Jalen Hurts in the NFC and the quarterbacks. Made a lot of noise on Twitter. I posted my rankings on Twitter, and that video was going crazy. A lot of people agree with me. A lot of people telling me I'm a clown. As long as I don't get compared to Chris Sims, I'm okay with it. I can take the heat, but I will stand by my list of quarterbacks and where I rank Jalen Hurts in the NFC. And you could see that video. If you haven't seen it yet, you could see that video. It's up on my X or my Twitter, whatever you want to call it. And if you're here on TikTok, it's also on my TikTok as well. But let's get a little roll call in the chat from the Power Hour crew. Tessie77, nice and early, checking in. Good morning to you. Fanny Eagles fan girl, good morning. Bry Guy, flexing and stepping, sacked. Xavier Spencer, Bill Spadaro in the house. Chuck Hutton, Brian Davis, Soul Vane, Bridget Tobin, prettiest girl in the chat. Who else we got? WCBJJ77, Soul Vane, MC, Wine Niners Wine as always. Jason 18, David Laprati, and we're here on TikTok as well. Give me a little roll call on TikTok. This is the Philly Sports Power Hour for those of you who haven't been here before. And again, I'm not a creeper on Bridget Tobin. That's my fiance, so I could say she's the prettiest girl in the chat. And I know I may be biased, but I'm not wrong. Steve Ike in the house. Ken S. checking in as well. I see M. John C. on TikTok. So a good show today. Kayla Santiago will be joining live around 10:20. But first, I want to address FS1's Craig Carton. So he comes on yesterday and makes this statement, which says he knows the real reason for the Eagles' collapse last season. It was a problem that would splinter any group of men. It's a real significant problem, and it cannot be fixed. And I will tell you that I'm not going to say anything more than that, but it will be interesting to see if a high-profile player will be with them next season. So first of all, he tells us nothing, okay? Gives us absolutely nothing. But I had a few people messaging me on Instagram saying, hey, did you see this Craig Carton statement about what happened with the Eagles? So I reached out to some people inside the Eagles organization, and I actually screenshot what Craig Carton said, and I sent it to them, and I said, is this dude just making stuff up? And the response I got back was, yes, 100% made up. That's what I thought, and it's been confirmed. So I hate that I'm even giving Craig Carton time on this show, because he got exactly what he wanted with all the clicks and all the people talking about him. But from what I was told by people with knowledge inside the Eagles organization, this was completely made up. And this morning on 97.5 The Fanatic, Adam Schefter said the same thing, that the people he spoke to inside the Eagles organization said it was complete SHIT. So that's my statement on Craig Carton. Made it up. Doesn't seem to be any accuracy to that report. So moving on. I know some people had asked me about it. on Instagram and TikTok too. So completely made up. But yesterday we spent a lot of time talking about the offense, about Jalen Hurts. And we really didn't get into some other things I want to see them do on offense, and we can do that real quickly, but then I want to jump over to the defense. But what I want to see them do on offense is they need to bring in an upgrade at the wide receiver 3 position. We were asking for that last offseason when we knew they were going to roll it back with Quez Watkins. They brought in a little bit of competition, I guess, if you want to call it competition, with Olamide Zaccheaus, who I like. I liked OZ, but not as your wide receiver 3. Maybe for some depth, your 4th receiver. He's going to make a play every once in a while. But both Quez Watkins and Olamide Zaccheaus are free agents going into this offseason, and they have to upgrade the wide receiver 3. They realized it midway through the season, and that's why they went out and brought in an aging Julio Jones. But Julio Jones, he didn't have much left. I know he made a couple of plays, but they have to upgrade that. So you look at, well, who's available that maybe makes sense this coming free agency period. They're not going to break the bank. They have far too many needs on the defensive side of the ball, which we'll talk about in a second. So I'd be shocked if they could get a guy like a Calvin Ridley. I mean, Calvin Ridley for me would be the pipe dream. We know he's got a history with these guys on the offense. He went to Alabama. The Eagles obviously liked him because they tried to get him before he was suspended. The only reason A.J. Brown's here is because the Eagles were about to pull the trigger on a trade for Calvin Ridley, and then they were told he's going to be suspended. That deal falls apart, and Jacksonville ends up getting him after the suspension. So they had interest in him. They did like him, but I just think he's going to probably want too much money to come here. So he's probably not an option. But they need a slot receiver. So I started looking at who could fit that mold of a slot receiver. And there's a guy who's been a headache for this team over the years, and that's Curtis Samuel from the Washington Commanders. I don't know what Curtis Samuel would want in free agency, but he could look nice in the slot with Devontae and A.J. Brown. I know people have thrown out Michael Pittman. Some people would be interested in him. I think he may want just as much money as a Calvin Ridley. I'm not sure you're going to be able to get a Michael Pittman. Then you got Gabe Davis is another one. Tyler Boyd is another one. I know people are talking about Mooney from Chicago. They just need to upgrade that wide receiver 3, but I don't want to see them break the bank. There's far too many other needs on the defensive side of the ball. But sticking to the offense, I also think they need a better backup tight end. As good as Dallas Goedert is, number one, he hasn't been able to stay healthy the last 2 seasons for 17 games. And behind him, you really don't have anything. Jack Stoll, great run blocker, isn't good in the receiving game. Grant Calcaterra, better in the receiving game, can't run block. I want to see this team able to run 12 personnel with 2 tight ends on the field that are both dual threats, because that's what makes Goddard so damn good. Is he's a really good run blocker, but he's also good in the passing game. I want a second tight end that has that same skill set. You don't have to break the bank. They don't have to be as good as Goddard, but maybe a guy like a Noah Fant, Dalton Schultz, Hunter Henry. If you don't have to break the bank for those guys, I'd like to see that on offense as well. And then obviously they need a running back. Do they go with Kenny Gainwell and some unknown? Or do they bring in somebody? I'd love to see them sign DeAndre Swift. I just don't know if it's going to happen. And then I see people in the chat talking about Kelsey, and that's the other question mark. Does he retire? I think if Kelsey retires, I'm okay rolling with Cam Jurgens at center. This is why you drafted him. You have to have faith in these draft picks. You drafted Cam Jurgens to take over for Jason Kelsey. You drafted Tyler Steen to step in at right guard. So we got to let these young guys play. You have to. It's the only way to win in the NFL is you have to be able to develop young talent. You can't have free agents at every position. You can't just go out and overpay for every position. So that's what they need to do on offense. But I'm not as concerned about the offense. We've talked about this in the past. I think the offense is going to be fine. With Kellen Moore, you still have Jalen Hurts, who you know I'm high on. I think they're going to be fine on offense. It's the defense that Howie Roseman has his work cut out for him in less than a month when free agency hits. And Reuben Frank over at NBC Sports Philly put out an interesting stat yesterday. The last 7 times the Philadelphia Eagles defense has ranked in the top 8 for points allowed, they've made the NFC Championship game. How crazy is that? The last 7 times they've ranked top 8 in points against, they've gone to an NFC Championship. And to refresh your memory, last season, they were 30th in the league in points against. But you look at the last 8 times it's happened, last 7 times it's happened. 2001, number 2 in points against. 2002, number 2 in points against. 2003, number 7 in points against. And 2004, number 2 in points against. They went to the NFC Championship 4 straight years. And then in 2008, when they went to the NFC Championship against the Arizona Cardinals, number 4 in points against. 2017, when they win the damn Super Bowl, number 4 in points against. And then in 2022, number 7 in points against. In fact, you have to go all the way back to 2000, 24 years ago, to see a time where the Eagles had a defense in the top 8 for defensive points allowed, where they didn't make the NFC Championship game. So this is key. They've never been to an NFC Championship with a defense outside of the top 10 in points against. I mean, if those stats don't tell you right now what the Eagles need to do this offseason, you have to build your defense back. Priority number 1, building that defense back. And it's not going to be easy because they are going to lose a lot of pieces. Now, all the pieces they're going to lose, I'm okay with. I don't care if they don't re-sign any of their free agents on the defensive side of the football. Shaq Leonard, I don't need you to re-sign him. Zach Cunningham, if you want to re-sign him for depth, but don't sell me on the fact that he's going to be our starter at linebacker. Sean Bradley, Nick Morrow, Justin Evans. I'm okay if they don't sign any of them. And then the other 2 are veterans, Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox. Brandon Graham, I know, wants to come back. He's not going to give you much. If you can get him for the veteran minimum just to add some depth, sure, bring him back. But I'm okay in letting Fletcher Cox retire if he wants too much money. This is, again, trust your draft picks. You drafted Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Marlon Tuipulotu. You got to let your young guys play. It's the only way they're going to be good. You can't keep overpaying for positions. So I'm okay with letting every single free agent on the defensive side of the football go. But then what does that mean for this Eagles defense? Well, I think they'll be okay at D tackle. I think they will. I know we have our questions about Jordan Davis, but they still have Jalen Carter. They still have Milton Williams, who's eligible. Milton Williams will be eligible for a new contract this year. Now, whether or not they give him one, I think they should, but we'll see if they give him one. Let's see, where do I have my people? Yeah, Milton Williams, he'll be a free agent in 2025, but remember how it works in the NFL. You have to play 3 full years. If you're a draft pick, you have to play 3 full years before you're eligible for a new contract. So this year, 3 notable guys who are eligible for contracts. Everybody knows Devontae Smith, but Landon Dickerson and Milton Williams. And the difference with Landon and Milton Williams, They don't have a fifth-year option because they weren't first-round draft picks. With Devontae Smith, you still have that in your back pocket. You're going to exercise that fifth-year option, and it gives you some more time to negotiate. I know they want to get a deal done. But with Landon Dickerson and Milton Williams, you got to probably get a deal done now because you don't have that fifth-year option with them. But I'm okay at D-tackle. I think they're fine at D-tackle with who they have. On the edge, big question marks because we don't know, is Hassan Reddick coming back? Even if Reddick comes back, you need depth. If Reddick doesn't come back and you trade him, you need a star. And then obviously linebacker. I posted a video this morning on all my social platforms about linebacker. They need an inside linebacker. And I know people are talking about the draft. I know people are talking about Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I want to see them draft somebody, but that's not enough. You can't go into this season with Nakobe Dean, who's a big question mark, Ben Van Sumeren, huge question mark, and then a rookie that you draft. Even if you took the rookie in the first round, which they're not going to do, even if you took a rookie linebacker in the first round, they'd be a question mark going into the season. There's no guarantee that their game's going to translate to the NFL level to start the 2024 season. So I need to see Howie Roseman change his philosophy and make a splash in free agency at inside linebacker. I still want them to draft somebody. Don't get me wrong. Still draft somebody. Still try to develop somebody. But this defense needs a playmaker at the linebacker position that we know to start the season, our linebacker position is fine. You got Frankie Lavu from Carolina, Patrick Queen from Baltimore, Jordan Brooks from Seattle. There's some linebackers available. I want to see them make a splash. And I think we need to do the same thing at safety. Because as promising as Sidney Brown was, we don't know when he's going to be healthy. Reed Blankenship, up and down, hasn't been able to stay healthy for 17 games. So I want to see them make a splash there as well because we've talked about this on the show. Kevin Byard, his cap hit skyrockets this year. Goes from $1 million to $14 million. They're not going to pay him that. They may renegotiate it and Byard's still here. But if not, he's gone. So I want to see playmakers at the safety position and the linebacker position. And I know a lot of people want cornerbacks. For me, that's third on the list. I want linebacker. I want safety. I'd actually be okay with the young corners they have. And with Isaiah Rodgers coming back from the suspension list, Zach McPherson coming back from IR, I'd actually be okay with the corners more than I am with the linebackers and the safety position. So I want to continue our Eagles talk with Kayla Santiago, and we'll also jump into a little Sixers as well, because they're going to be back from the All-Star break tomorrow night. And don't forget about our Flyers. Fly Guys back in action tonight against the Chicago Blackhawks. So hopefully we'll do some hockey talk tomorrow on the show. But we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, we will be joined like we are every Wednesday by the one and only Kayla Santiago. Stay tuned.
Go to get your